I would like to discuss borderline personality disorder in more detail. Um, Borderline personality disorder is a very complex pathology, uh, which, like I said before, I think is largely misunderstood. The borderline, they feel things, I feel like, at like 6,000 times the way that other people feel them. So if someone makes a tiny, minute comment that the borderline perceives as kind of hurtful or some kind of slight on their part, um, they might go off on somebody. So, and it's not because this is why it's confusing to the person dealing with the borderline, because they don't understand why the borderline's responses seem so irrational, because the borderline feels emotions so intensely, whether it's pain, whether it's pleasure. They feel like everything at like 6,000 times the way everyone else does. So it's like amplified basically, or they feel it at an exponential rate in comparison to everyone else. So they may react in a way that seems completely irrational to just some minute comment. Like, let's say you had a couple and a girlfriend and a boyfriend, for example, let's just say, and the boyfriend compliments another woman, or says she's beautiful in front of his girlfriend who's a borderline. She'll sit there and think about that probably for weeks. Or it is possible that they could go off on the boyfriend because what seemed like a totally minute comment, even though it's disrespectful to begin with, probably, but maybe the boyfriend, he's just social. Maybe he's just friendly. He likes to chit chat with everyone. Maybe he's just super friendly. Maybe he didn't mean any harm by it. He's just a kind of like a social person. He just likes to literally shoot the breeze with everyone. Maybe something came out at the end or in the beginning, wherever, that didn't seem appropriate to the borderline girlfriend that was there. The borderline, they tend to sort of like fixate on certain things. Like they'll sit there and fixate and go over and over and over and over in their minds. Oh, what does that mean? Why did they do that? Did that mean something? This, that, and the third. And the person that did it probably doesn't give it a second thought. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's no big deal. It didn't mean anything. They didn't mean it maybe in a disrespectful way. Maybe even if it was disrespectful, they may not have intended it to be that way. So what happens is the borderline's reactions seem extremely irrational, even though they're completely rational to the borderline, because the borderline is going, wait a minute, I'm still hurting from that, 3 weeks later, because remember, they feel everything at like 6,000 times the way everyone else feels it. So they'll literally still be hurting from something, weeks later, or they could think of something, because they're like uber sensitive, similar to narcissists and their fragile self-esteem. Borderlines are quite similar, but they're different in many, many ways, because, for example, borderlines do have empathy and narcissists and psychopaths do not. They can love and they can empathize with people. They absolutely have empathy. They're loving. The thing is, they have to be in a nurturing, loving, and supportive environment. If they're not, if they're around toxic abusers, then you're going to see a bunch of outbursts. So it can be very confusing for the person dealing with the borderline, because until they understand the pathology, they won't know how to treat the borderline or act around the borderline. They won't understand that, wait a minute, I just made this tiny little comment. I don't understand her reaction, why it was like seemed so unwarranted, and it didn't seem to match the actual comment or thing that actually happened. You see what I'm saying? However, the borderline can also control their own outbursts. They do have self-control. They can learn techniques on how to stop any kind of outburst. And like I said, borderlines are not like narcissists in the sense that narcissists are predatorial. A borderline is not looking for any one period to abuse. Matter of fact, they're kind of soloists to a large degree, because they feel things so much that the world actually becomes scary to them, because literally anything and anyone can hurt them, even if it's the tiniest comment or action. It could hurt them. So it becomes actually like a kind of a scary place, because someone could just say the most tiniest thing and it could bother the borderline. So now narcissists, I could see how they would love dealing with borderlines, because narcissists love reactions. And so if they know the person's borderline, then they're going to try to push the borderline's buttons, because they know the borderlines have outbursts. So that is like a match made in hell. A narcissist and a borderline is like a match made in hell, because the narcissist will just sit there and toy with the borderline. However, as I said in my prior video, the borderline can literally rip a narcissist to shreds if they want, and go about their merry way and go eat dinner and think nothing of it. Okay, this is why borderlines are very scary, because they can literally turn psychopathic like it's nothing. So they can switch on a dime. That's actually really, really kind of frightening. So, in a way, that's almost scarier. I don't know. You tell me what you guys think. But borderlines, as I said, they're not predatorial. They're not seeking out people to quote unquote abuse, because people seem to say that they're abusive. Borderlines are reactive. They react to abuse. And see what I'm saying? If they then go and rip an abuser to shreds, and the abuser then goes, oh, well, you're an abuser, that's abusive. Well, no, actually, they got what they had coming to them. You see what I'm saying? So that's what they're actually calling people on the internet, and these so-called doctors are calling as borderline abuse. If you rip an abuser to shreds, is that abuse? Technically, two wrongs do not make a right. So, yeah, it's not good to, be abusive to someone who's abusing you. However, if someone starts something and the borderline finishes it, then don't get mad at the borderline, because the borderline just reacted in a way that they felt was accordingly. You see what I'm saying? So what's happening is, I'm not saying two wrongs make a right. I'm not saying it's a good idea to rip someone to shreds. But when you've been abused your whole life, most borderlines have been a history of trauma and abuse, possibly neglect in their childhood, some form of abuse. I don't know if it's physical, neglect, something like that. There's been some form of trauma and abuse. You can also develop borderline later in life, just from a trauma. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be in childhood. So, and also there may be a genetic component as well. So, But like I said, borderlines are not are seeking out no one. Narcissists sit around all day, like the predators that they are, on social media, wherever, in person, looking for people to abuse. Borderlines seek out no one. They seek out no one. They're not looking for anyone. They only respond to what they feel is abuse because of their uber sensitivity. They will go off on someone that they feel is abusing them or says something to them inappropriate. They will fight it tooth and nail. So this is what they're calling abusive, because they responded to abuse with maybe ripping the person to shreds, and then they're going, oh, well, the borderline is very abusive. I'm not saying it's good to respond in a manner like that, where you might rip someone to shreds and make them cry, but when you're being attacked, you attack back, do you not? Is anyone going to sit there and let someone punch them in the face? I don't think they are. They're gonna punch back. You see what I'm saying? So this is what's happening, and this is a lot of the misconceptions with borderlines. Borderlines do have empathy. They are capable of love. They do have a very hard time. They don't function well. Their relationships don't tend to last long, but that's because of the lack of understanding of the partners of the person with borderline. And most borderlines don't even know they have borderline. So, I mean, you got a lot of confusing stuff going on. So, anyway, borderlines are not abusive. They are reactive, and they have a hard time holding steady jobs, holding steady relationships, family relationships, romance relationships. So everything it becomes chaotic, and that's due to, like I said, their uber sensitivity, because anytime, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's romance, whether it's anything, that anyone says anything, remember, they're so sensitive that they feel it to like the umpteenth degree. This makes relationships hard in general because the other person has zero understanding of that. And they're thinking, well, I'm just making these innocent comments. Why is this person going ballistic? You see what I'm saying? So yeah, they might have inappropriate responses that could seem abusive, but these things can be totally worked out in therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. There's specific therapies that they use for borderlines. These things can be worked out, and any kind of outbursts on the part of the borderline can actually be controlled once the borderline themselves understands their own pathology. A narcissist cannot change and will be going on a merry-go-round like a broken record for the rest of their lives. They do not change. They're set in stone with their pathology.